back, everybody. Another week, another amazing episode of Radio Rocketman. Here to break down what's happening around the world. With me is my one and only co-host, George. Hi, George. How are you?
Hola, muchachos. Hola, muchachos. I'm doing great, Luigi. How about you? Actually, I'm not doing great. Personally, I'm doing great. But the news is weighing us down by the week. I was thinking about it, Luigi, and genuinely, I've done the whole 7 stages of grief about the Israel news and what they're doing to the Palestinians, and I think I've reached the acceptance phase at this point. I'm just observing everything like I don't know, a faraway organism. It's like, oh, humans. Look at these stupid humans.
Look at the monkeys still killing each other over pieces of land.
Yes. And and olive groves, I guess. It's the Middle East.
Sometimes there's resources involved as well, but sometimes
it's so sad, and we've got a lot of that. But let's start with the funny news, Luigi. Let's start with the funny news. Let's start light, and it's a tradition, and we gotta build up to it, build up our constitution, our mental fortitude, Luigi, to be able to withstand
the sadness of the world. So.
Yes, good sir.
Right, so what do we have? I see an amazing picture there. Is that the French president?
That is the one, the only. Vive la France.
With the reincarnation of Jesus Christ.
With I think we have almost endorsed Lula, I believe, when the elections were held. I think he's one of those politicians who almost got our coveted endorsement. I mean, we were with him. We certainly weren't going to support fucking Jair Bolsonaro. And I think Lula is
the Amazon Bolsonaro.
Yeah, not the best bet considering circumstances.
Jair, I mimic Trump and burn down the environment on an average Tuesday, Bolsonaro. Sorry.
Yeah. And we also commented that we were also very in favor of what they did with Jair regarding the stupid coup he tried to pull off. And then that should have been America's approach, basically. You wanna try this shit quickly. You wanna cut it at the root, right, Luigi? you shouldn't let them do too many beer hall putsches, right? because then even an idiot can maybe get it right on the 4th try.
At the very least, you want to actually
excise the tumor. Yeah, you wanna punish them, obviously, with the rule of law, but you gotta do it, pronto. You gotta do it fast. You can't do it 4 years. You can't do it 4 years afterwards, right? In between an election where the guy who's being investigated is participating in it. It's just too late by then. So anyway, Brazil dealt with that, and now what have we? I mean, fuck knows what we have on this news. I don't even know. Macron visited Lula, and they had a glorious 3-day trip to Brazil to reaffirm their beautiful budding partnership, let's call it. And let's look at this.
Wait. Macron wanted vacations, and he picks up the phone. He's like, Ignacio, mon ami, how are you? I'm thinking I'm gonna be passing through your neighborhood.
Ignacio, I love you, mon ami. You know my feelings. You know what I feel about you. Tete, me and you on the sea, the breeze in our hair. Oh, mon ami.
Bottle of Chardonnay.
I'll bring the Chardonnay. You bring some nice steak. I know you do nice steak. And we ride on the polluted, stinky waters of your beautiful country.
That's what I wanted to point out. Look at that picture and look at the color of the water.
Not the best. Maybe it's muddy, Luigi.
Yeah, maybe it's muddy. Maybe it's not pollution, right? But
maybe it's just stinky, fatty juices and you can smell it.
If you're gonna plan a photo op between 2 presidents on a fishing boat, find somewhere that the water isn't muddy for the photo op.
On the other hand, Luigi, I mean, look at this scene. I mean, they're shiny, I would
They're
say, at
so
this point,
united. They're
and
so
and
united.
and they look so HD, right?
Yeah. It could almost be an AI generated image. It's like, give me a photo of the French and the Brazilian presidents on a fishing boat in the middle of nowhere having fun.
Let's move. Let's go to the next one, then. I want your opinion on that. Are you ready for it?
I'm not sure. Wow.
Wow.
That has to be AI, right?
That, it's not. It's not actually. It's a real photo. We
They
can
look
find it
like
as
two
well.
darlings on their honeymoon.
It is an incredible photo,
Let's
right?
hold, oh, Emmanuel, let's hold hands and run towards the sea. Oh,
Mon ami. Oh,
in a
Emmanuel.
totally platonic way, obviously.
Manuel, let us gallivant around the forest, the beautiful forest trees. Let us traipse on the soft ground and the undergrowth as we look at the beautiful animals and have hot sex under the canopy.
Emmanuel, when I was in prison, my roommate looked like you. We had a lot of fun.
It was a rough year, Manuel, but the nights were fun. The last one isn't that good. I'm not gonna lie, Luigi. It's yeah, but still, man, the bond is real, people. That's
I
the
mean,
news. The bond is
you
real.
struggle to find
Brazil
a
and
picture.
France under a tree forever. I think it's done. It's done,
you,
Luigi.
You know what's happening here? Macron is trying to sort of steal Lula away, trying to steal Brazil away from, I don't know, the Chinese slash Indian slash BRICS sphere of influence.
Oh, you want to get
I,
serious? Yeah, part of that, definitely. Partly the West trying to ensure that, and partly France itself, right? France's interests as well. It's all of it, yeah. Trying to
yeah.
ensure that steer Brazil in the Western direction. Keep Brazil.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, from
Definitely.
going totally towards the China direction. And well, I mean, you can shit on Macron for 1,000 things. The biggest one being trying to raise, gas prices on people. But like, you can't argue with with what he's done from a foreign policy perspective. He's put France back on the map almost as a global player, which it hadn't been for decades, I would argue.
He definitely puts his mark more, and he often gets it right with foreign policy. Obviously, not always. With Israel, he's been all over the fucking place.
What was the strong? I mean, as far as European leaders go, he was one of the strongest in
After
terms of
after
condemning
after
the
after he U-turned,
humanitarian.
Luigi, right at the
After
start,
he
he was
U-turned, yeah, of
yeah, yeah,
course.
yeah. Hey, but I
I
have to
mean,
criticize him before the
nobody got
youth.
it right. Nobody
Dude,
got it right at the
yes,
beginning.
Pedro Sanchez from Spain, the Irish, some even in
Yeah,
Europe
some,
got it
some.
better than the great Emmanuel, but usually I agree with you, Luigi. I agree with you that definitely gets it usually more right. But I mean, yeah, with Ukraine, bit temperamental as well, wouldn't you say? I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Only on a foreign policy level, right? If you look at what he's done with France domestically, economically, trying to raise taxes on the middle class, the retirement age fiasco, all of the protests. I mean, okay, protests are an average Sunday in France, but I would argue that they were slightly larger than what we were used to in previous decades. So I think he's unpopular domestically, but super popular outside of France, which is a really weird situation to have.
yeah, I'm not certain how popular he is outside of France, Luigi Macron.
Well, yeah.
He's definitely known far more than Hollande. That was the previous
Mhm.
French president, but nobody remembers.
He's basically the only European leader that has really pushed for European integration, for
Yes, yes, yes.
structuring the European Union as it could be an ever closer union, eventually political union,
I
a
think, I
common
think, I
army.
think, yeah, I think he gets it most right as regards intra-European politics, yeah, in the EU.
Yeah,
Definitely more right than the Germans.
yeah, for sure, for sure. By the way, the Germans are in deep shit. We discussed it in previous episodes very quickly. Like the economy isn't doing that well. They are about to do a round of austerity by force, essentially by constitutional mandate. So the
Yeah.
constitution, doesn't allow them to run a significant deficit, and they are about to cut spending at a period when the economy is already
Yeah, it's a
on its
shitty
knees.
idea. I mean, we figured that one out since the 1930s, dude, with a guy named
With
fucking
Keynes.
Keynes. Yeah. We figured that shit out that, in an economy when there's unemployment high, you spend. If the private sector doesn't spend, the public sector spends.
Has to,
Otherwise, you're
Otherwise,
just a
you end up
fucking
in a greater.
hamster on a hamster wheel and you can just suck your fucking fart juices as you run in circles forever, dipshit.
Excellent analysis, excellent.
Thank you, Senor Luigi.
I was gonna say you end up in something resembling the Great Depression. Otherwise,
Oh yeah,
you cut governments, but yeah, a hamster wheel. What was it? Fart juices. That
it was
sounded more scientific.
Let's move on quickly, Luigi.
Let's keep going.
What do you think about
Our
this?
favorite dictator for one day. Just a day.
Yes,
I'm gonna be the best dictator.
We have to add the exclamation. It's just a day, folks. It's just a day. Although, as Jon Stewart said, that's what they all say, isn't it? That's how it always starts. Whatever. We'll take it. Just a day. Discount dictator only for a day. Gets your affairs in order. Then abdicates the dictatorship. What a joke!
In his place.
What a joke, man! And what do you say about this? I mean, why was it even valued, Luigi, so highly if it lost a fifth or a quarter of its value?
Okay, so here's the little story about Truth Social. So Truth Social, before it went public, it was valued at about 3 to 4 billion, depending on how you valued it, right? And the moment it went public, so the moment actual average Joes sort of could invest in that, it went up to 9 billion in valuation. And a lot of times that's what happens, right? A lot of times when you have a personality like Trump that has a super loyal following, and there's a lot of hype behind the company, the moment it goes public, a lot of what we call stupid money tries to go into that stock. And well, there's a reason it's called stupid money, because it usually loses out. So there was a lot of hype behind the stock. It went public, it rose very substantially, and then it fell pretty substantially. And as you would imagine, a lot of people are holding the bag out there. So yeah, good luck with that. The company is losing money, as you mentioned. So how it was originally valued that high is beyond me, but I haven't really looked at the specifics of that. So it's just a bunch of hype. To sum all of that up.
I mean, I'm looking here. The company had a similar valuation to Reddit. Listen, Reddit sucks, but Reddit is a more fucking substantial website than whatever the fuck Truth Social is, right? I mean, the same valuation. You can tell it's a joke immediately from that.
But look at the article. Both companies are making losses. Trump's losses are about 60 billion. Reddit's losses are about 90 million a year. And, Reddit obviously has much higher sales, but then Trump has the hype factor that I was referring to. So, look, you can't compare the two.
And a shitload of very loyal followers, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't really want to bore people with all of this, but the simple sort of thing is markets go up and markets go down, and sometimes it doesn't take a lot for that to happen. So even if it has gone down, it's still valued pretty substantially. Let me find the actual valuation.
It was 3.83 billion and it lost 21%.
Yeah, so still pretty substantial. If
Trump
owns 60% of that,
he's gonna hold. Isn't it right that he has to hold on for 6 months though before he starts cashing out?
He has a lockup period, but as we've said, by the way, the valuation, I just checked it, it's 6.7 billion right now. So almost 7 billion. And yes, Trump has a lockup period of 6 months, but he can borrow against those shares. So he can get a loan by pledging those shares as collateral.
As long as it exists and it's worth billions, whatever amount of billions.
It's not going to go away in 6 months. So
even if he goes to jail, I imagine this shit is going to exist. Yeah.
I might even go out on a limb and say it becomes even more popular.
Who knows?
The truth in jail.
Martyr social, it's me. So we move on after this. I mean, he's got a rare hit, but I mean, not a hit that he won't be able to recover from. And on that line of logic, he's been leading New Paul Show, 6 swing states. As I mean, we never talked about any fucking Biden bounce. People, there's no way this degenerate specimen of humanity. Yeah, I'm not talking about the other degenerate specimen. I'm talking about this degenerate specimen of humanity right now. There's no way he gets a fucking bounce. Considering that I think young people, when I say young, I mean under 40, I'd say maybe even 50, is not gonna cut him slack on what he's been doing with Israel. And what is allowed Israel to get away with. I think that is at this point sort of evident. And you don't need big numbers for Trump to win, which is, yeah.
It's extremely close. Look, the way I'm reading Biden's situation, like if you're Biden, you might even be feeling a little bit frustrated right now, because if you just go by policy achievements, like what the guy has actually passed through Congress, it's actually quite impressive, right? And I mean that in the sense of making a difference to the average American's life. So for example,
in the sense of what the previous presidents have been able, especially the recent ones, have been able to accomplish domestically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with a deadlocked Congress, with a divided Congress as well. So insulin being capped at $35 is a huge, like we've been talking about this for decades and it never got done. Biden did it.
He did it for Medicare, though, didn't he? I think, yeah. You can always find, addendums. So you're right. Yeah,
most senior citizens, though,
all
that require insulin. So what I'm saying is, great first step in the right direction. You can go with infrastructure. He did some of the biggest infrastructure spending in recent history, and you look at the CHIPS Act.
Yeah, so he expects. So I agree. You're right in explaining his feelings. He's probably fucking pissed. He's like, I've done so much, far more than my buddy Barack Obama, and look at the response. And part of the response is what I said. Yeah.
As you mentioned, he's really weak on the foreign policy front and on the domestic economic front in the sense of inflation. Like inflation fucked everything up for him.
Which is hard to handle, especially considering. But he could have done more. He could have done more. Yeah, he could have gone to the level of setting fucking prices at supermarkets. He could have done it. He could have done it. It's been done before.
That would never fly in the US. It's been done before during the Second World War. I mean, it's not a war-type situation.
Even Nixon did it during the oil crisis. It was an oil crisis, Luigi. Yeah. I mean, this was a crisis, and it was also an energy crisis.
Biden sold oil barrels through the Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
Yes, so he did that. He did that, yeah.
It wasn't like he was sitting on his hands, but what I'm saying is, like, the guy has actually passed things through Congress that actually matter. But if you are weak on foreign policy, well, it usually doesn't matter if you're weak on foreign policy.
Yes.
But inflation has basically screwed Biden over bigly.
And I think, I genuinely think that he has been so criminally bad vis-a-vis Israel that, I mean, he's so bad that he's clearly at this point going to be tried as well by the ICJ for aiding and abetting a genocide.
That's never going to happen.
So, I mean, it's happening, dude. I mean, they're going to...
The US president is never going to be dragged into that, even a former president.
Not a president, the country. That's the way it works in the ICJ. It's not the criminal court, not the Hague. It's the Hague. They're both at the Hague.
They're both at the Hague.
Buildings. That one, Luigi, the ICC, the International Criminal Court, is far more politically captured, as far as I'm able to tell, than the ICJ, which is the top court of the United Nations, the International Court of Justice. So, I mean...
So, we're talking about election
polls. What were we talking about?
Yes, about election polls. And
but I think apart from the inflation... I mean, if we're going to go by what Americans are saying, we've got immigration as well, Luigi. I mean, a lot of Americans are polling on their list of concerns. They've got immigration very high up there.
And Trump, he's answering the call, right? They are animals.
And not
They're
human.
not
Thank you,
human.
thank you. I mean, he has to make the distinguishment because humans are animals. So they're not human animals, is what it is. Yeah, whatever.
By the way,
Yeah, sorry, Luigi.
I'm getting deja vus from
Well, Hitler, because this is literally Hitler level
Hitler.
of rhetoric. They're animals. They're poisoning the blood of our nation. I mean, Jesus, dude. I
The
mean,
Democrats, this is an actual quote. The Democrats say, please don't call them animals. They're humans. I said, no, they're not humans. They're not humans. They are animals.
the high
This
functioning
was
candidate,
the high
people.
functioning
That's the
candidate.
high,
Yeah.
the high. I mean, functioning so highly, people couldn't even realize things could function so highly. That's how highly we're
I
functioning,
mean,
Luigi.
honestly, I understand this is mostly rhetoric, but like, I think you're right. You have to go almost back to Hitler to find
Yes,
similar sort
yes,
of.
subhuman speech. Yeah, I mean, you can go through the Rwanda genocide and other places if you don't want to go, if you don't want to invoke the Hitler
Yeah,
singularity. But
but
this is fascist rhetoric, folks.
exactly.
By the way, you can go to Israel now and you can find the
Yeah,
same
you're gonna
rhetoric.
find similar. By the way, that's what I was gonna say. I was getting deja vu
Sorry.
from
Yeah, yeah.
after the say October 7th attack.
You can
You heard,
find it. Yeah, sorry, let's go on.
yeah, no. You were hearing Israeli officials saying they're not humans, they're animals, and we're gonna treat them as such. And
Yes, I think the
well,
defense, what was it? The defense minister, one of them. It's in the fucking ICJ trial, yeah.
yeah.
The statement.
But look, here's what I don't get. Like, okay, so I can understand being a Republican and being, generally blaming migrants for your deteriorating living standards. I don't agree with it, but I can understand it, right? Are you really on board with calling migrants animals? Like, are you willing to go that far? Like saying I want to cut back on immigration and
Yeah,
on the next breath saying they are animals.
yeah.
Like, dude, that's an escalation out of nowhere.
That's
And
a very dangerous escalation, yeah.
how many
Yeah.
people are on board with this and how many people are getting put off, let's say? Trump's base is going to be Trump's base, but how
It's
many people that,
fucking
that
neck
were.
and neck, Luigi, and as we just saw, he leads in fucking swing states. Now, it doesn't mean that the people are voting him in the swing states because of his immigration rhetoric, but they know by now what his immigration rhetoric is. It's a sad state of affairs, dude. I mean, a lot of people have tried to understand how fascism grips a nation. Fear, I guess, mixed with, I don't know.
Demonizing
Yeah.
some group of people, usually immigrants, let's face it, and
Any external group, yeah.
it usually requires a bad economic situation as well. It
Oh, yeah.
usually it requires some crisis economically, hyperinflation, stuff like that.
And it's super effective, as you have seen constantly everywhere all the time.
Yeah. Okay, so what else do we have on our agenda, George?
Should we bypass one of them? Because fuck it, it's just a degenerate. This guy, he called for Gaza to be bombed like Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Who is
Tim
he?
Wolberg.
Tim Wolberg of Michigan, U.S. House, a Republican
A
representative.
former, go down, a former pastor, a former
Oh,
Christian
yes.
pastor, advocates,
I think it's very on message. I think it's very on message.
former Christian pastor advocates for nuking innocent
Yeah.
people. Yeah, I mean, you can't make this shit up anymore. It's like the jokes are
Yeah.
writing themselves.
Yeah. It's ridiculous, right? And I just wanted to say it's just what we were talking about. In this election, it's a lose-lose in terms of Israel, in terms of Israel and the Palestinians, right? Because he's even worse, this degenerate over here.
Yeah, obviously, but Trump was never gonna get those type of voters anyway.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
the
Yeah.
American
But
Arab
asking,
voter.
dude, asking the American Arab voter and anyone who sympathizes, it's not just them, but asking them to fucking align with Joe is just such an insult, right? Because Joe gives zero shits, almost zero shits. Let's say an infinitesimally small amount of a shit about what's happening. It's just so sad, right? Because there's no winning, is there? Let's seg into the most serious of stuff. If you heard about this, the Israelis nuked an Iranian consulate in Syria. I think that counts for an escalation, don't you, Luigi?
A slight escalation,
A
you could say.
slight, slight
Perhaps.
escalation of behavior. Iran has vowed revenge, destroyed the Iranian consulate in Damascus, killing at least 11 people, including a senior commander in the Al-Quds force of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. I mean, unprecedented. And I think this is part of a pattern, Luigi, that I would describe as Israel going on a rampage for the past few days.
Yeah. I mean, I
A
don't know
complete
where
rampage at this point. I mean, bombing the consulate, the Iranian consulate. Then we had this with 7 Gazaite workers killed in an Israeli strike. They killed a convoy from the World Central Kitchen, which is the charity that's basically spearheading the efforts to alleviate the looming famine in Gaza. They're basically the charity that distributes the goods that are being shipped from Cyprus, basically. They're the ones that are running it because Israel, as you remember, has barred UNRWA from running that.
which
Because
was the
the
dedicated
UN,
arm of the UN for
exactly.
Gazaite.
So they banned that one. So we had the World Central Kitchen doing it, and now the Israelis droned them. And are you familiar? I've got the rundown of how they did it, Luigi. And by the way, yes, this time there's been, let's say, a bit more. We'll get to the response from the Western countries. But this time, the killings included UK, US, and Australian citizens, and we've got them. Brightons from the UK, John, James, who were working for the child security team. The team's leader, an Australian national, also died, along with an American-Canadian dual citizen, and a Polish national, and a Palestinian, all of them heroes. And they were all droned. And I've got the rundown of what happened. I don't know if you know it, Luigi.
I don't know. It was a convoy of 3 cars.
Yes.
The first one got bombed. By the way, they
Yes.
had notified the Israeli Defense Forces
Of course.
that they were going to be moving along that road as a convoy for humanitarian aid. The first car got hit. They thought it was an accident. They tried to sort of radio back to the Israelis that, we're actually aid workers, and
we're getting hit, we're getting droned. Yeah, sorry, did you go on? The second one,
the second one got bombed, and as you can imagine, the third one got hit as well.
So and then they kept getting bombed as they traveled along, and each time, which I think is the most harrowing detail, and everybody who kept surviving each bombing kept getting dragged into a new vehicle that kept getting bombed, as they were desperately trying to contact the Israelis to stop fucking bombing them. They wasted them. And that was the rundown. Thank you, Luigi. More than 208 workers have been killed since the war began, and the whole thing. I mean, I've heard from I don't remember who it was, but it was basically. I mean, judging from the behavior of Israel up to this point, I wouldn't call it an absolute reach to consider that they did this intentionally. Is what I'm getting at.
Man, I've grappled, there's been a lot of speculation around that. Look, I can understand the argument. And the argument is, even if you are an aid worker, you are not safe. Don't deliver aid to these people.
I mean, the response has been as expected that charities have halted. I remember reading Cyprus has informed them that the vessels carrying the remaining aid are starting to return back. They have halted the aid. So, I mean, the charity teams are responding exactly like Israel is targeting them.
Exactly.
because they've called off. Yeah, sorry.
You know what annoys me? For me, these people, like an Australian that decides to sort of dedicate his life to helping other people and ends up on the other side of the world, like in Gaza, trying to bring food to starving people. For me, these people are heroes.
Definitely.
And the fact that they are so. Man, I mean, there's zero regard for anyone. I mean, it's a combat zone. And, I was reading some articles. Basically, the argument was that according to, well, this is unconfirmed, but in Israeli press, there was a story that, some sort of satellite image saw somebody carrying a gun. I think
it was Haaretz, Luigi. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. And the argument was that that's what spooked, let's say, the defense forces, and they decided it was
as if someone carrying a gun in a war zone to protect
people. In
an
actual war zone, I mean, where the locals are starving and you are carrying food. You're not going to carry a gun.
and who had notified you of it. And it goes to tell you, by the way, that detail that by a report in a publication in Israel. I mean, if we take that statement at face value, that means they have no regard. They have so little regard for any civilian population that might get killed collaterally that it's basically it's the most savage of war zones. That zero regard to whatever the rules of war, however, in as much as they exist is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Zero regard for civilian and any and all civilian collateral kills is acceptable.
It's acceptable.
Provided we saw someone with a gun, in Gaza.
We crossed the Rubicon several months ago on this
Yeah.
front, and I understand that you're gonna do that. It's up to everyone else to sort of condemn you and force you not to do that, as long as everyone is keeping their mouths shut.
The best I've heard, Luigi, was the Australian Prime Minister. Not nearly enough. But yeah, he would call in the Israeli ambassador over the incident. They don't really give a shit. I mean,
I mean, a
honestly.
slap on the wrist, like
Yeah.
a verbal scolding. Nobody cares, dude.
And that was his response, by the way. The grade. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. It's collateral damage.
It's
That's what
war,
they keep
dude.
saying.
It's war. It's
By the
war.
way, okay, so it's a war.
Yeah, sorry,
This is the
Luigi.
bloodiest war for UN workers. I'm not gonna say ever because it's probably not ever, but
But it's
yeah.
possibly ever. It's that bad, yeah.
You can make 1,000 arguments. You can say that it's an extremely small area, territorially speaking. So you are bound to have more collateral damage. But what I never understood is the following. Everybody keeps saying there's like an underground network of tunnels below Gaza, and that's why we can't get them. And if that's true, then how can the answer be to bomb the fuck out of the overground? How can the answer to terrorists hiding underground be to bomb everything above the surface?
As far as I'm, yeah, sorry, Luigi. As far as I'm concerned, they have no plan. They have no plan beyond unleashing the savagery on the Palestinians for what they regard, as a revenge for October 7th. That's the plan. There is no other plan.
Yeah, at what point do you draw the line? At what point do you say we've gotten enough revenge?
At what point do our spineless Western scam, our leaders,
that's what I'm saying.
fucking rein this behavior in? Well, we'll have to wait and see. We haven't reached that point yet.
Yeah, I would say might coincide with US elections and comfortably give Biden that little extra push he's looking
I would
for.
hope so. I would hope so because, I mean, if Trump gets elected, I mean, can it get worse than this? Possibly.
Yeah, it can always get worse.
It can always get worse. It can always get worse. I've seen a few of his responses. Not impressed, folks. I mean, he doesn't even want to talk about
Trump
it, to
would
be
be
honest.
cheerleading this, dude. Trump used to lick Bibi's balls.
Yes, that he did.
Years ago.
Trump thought he could make the grand bargain experiment that every other Arab state would throw the Palestinians under the bus and normalize relations with Israel for, I don't know, weapons or something. I don't know what the great genius thought was there. For a few beautiful Trump towers. It's all a joke and it's very grim. And if we can, let's finish up with this as quickly as we can. You remember when I've mentioned this previously? Apparently, the Israelis have two AIs. One of it, the Gospel, which I've mentioned, targets infrastructure, and the Lavender system targets civilians. It targets, identifies combatants, let's say.
Civilian-linked, sort of, okay.
And I mean, at the worst of times, Luigi, as far as I said, the civilian ratio that would be approved would go up to 20 civilians for anyone vaguely associated with being a Hamas militant.
So
that was the worst it gone. Yeah, 20 to 1.
Or 95% civilian casualty rate for 5% combatant. Dude, that is, I mean, disgusting. I mean, I know we're just discussing numbers, but I mean, At
Beyond
what point do you draw
disgusting,
the line?
yeah.
Like, can you kill 1,000 people to kill a single person? Like, where do you draw that line? It's so difficult morally.
And I mean, I've read this whole article, and it makes for a very grim reading. And I mean, what you come out with is, I mean, you've got instances. I mean, the algorithm favored the targets being in their homes, and they didn't want to waste good bombs on those targets on the low-level ones. So this basically outsourced to a fucking algorithm that was permitted to kill up to 20 civilians. During the early weeks of the war, they were permitted to kill 15 or 20. During airstrikes on low-ranking militants, attacks on such targets were typically carried out using unguided munitions known as damn bombs, destroying entire homes, killing all their occupants. And I mean, this goes a long way to accounting for the civilian death toll and the utter devastation that we have witnessed. And what it looks like is, I remember reading through this article, it's just there is a human eye at one point overseeing this process, but it's something like 20 seconds of a decision, Luigi. It's just like rubber stamping the whole shit. It's just target whatever 20 civilians do it. And basically it's the image we have gotten from the outside without needing these leaks from military sources, from Israeli military sources. It's just that unleashing their savagery for revenge, basically, on a population that they've already. I mean, I don't want to go into the history. We covered the debate. There's a long history. But beyond anything else, this is just, unleashing everything they can because of October 7th.
Yeah. Like you said at the very beginning, I've reached that stage where, I mean, it's horrifying, but we've covered it so much that I'm starting to become numb to it.
This isn't in any way acceptable.
I think that, anyway, this is a big conversation. I think we've covered it pretty well.
Let's not overburden our listeners.
Continues.
The suffering continues. His response pathetic. And should we finish up with something light, Luigi?
Yeah.
Everyone in Japan will be called Sato by 2531 unless marriage law is changed, says Professor. I know. Sato-sama, I know what you're Sato-san, Sato-kun.
Sato-san.
The samurai is
being
named. I know what you're thinking. I mean, Sato already tops the list of Japanese surnames, accounting for 1.5 of the total. Are they dying that fast, Luigi? That's gonna be a guy named Sato.
I've said this before. They're losing 0.5% of their population per year. Yes. Like, if you extend that forward 200 years, it's a problem.
Of course, he considered. We could tell your projections were based on several assumptions.
An April's Fool joke. Was that
No. It wasn't. Although they wrongly assumed it was. Couples in Japan have to choose which surname to share when they marry, but in 95% of cases, it is the woman who changes her name. But however, this would be different.
Why Sato in particular? Why is that surname going to dominate the land of the rising sun?
I think because it's the most dominant one. I think it's a case of being at the top of the hill. The biggest fish eats the smallest fish, Luigi.
So some researcher plugged that into a model and said, in 400 years, if we continue on this path.
It's just going to be a guy named Sato, just making sushi lonely in the middle of an abandoned Tokyo.
Speaking of Tokyo, the Japanese have been threatening to, whatever, this is slightly serious, but speaking of Japan, their currency has collapsed and they're threatening to intervene in the currency market any day now. They did twice back in 2022.
They should buy the currency, shouldn't they?
You should at least take vacations in Japan. It's the cheapest it's been in our lifetimes.
Buy a bit of your currency, dude. Samurai, what the fuck?
Samurai, George.
Yeah, let's call it a day, Luigi.
Yeah, let's call it a day. Great episode. See you next week.
See you guys. Bye-bye.